Thanks very much, Dick. Our next speaker is well known to monetary reformers. It's Kenny Bohnsack. And Ken is the originator of the sovereignty proposal from the early 90s. And this was a proposal for the U.S. government to issue its own greenbacks, either as greenbacks or in the form of account money, and to lend that money interest-free to a whole range of governmental institutions, from school boards to villages to cities, counties, all the way up to states. And in this process that went over some years, he gathered about 3,300, he'll give you the exact number, 3,300 people who, or rather groups, which supported that proposal. And I think Ken is going to tell us a bit about how he did that. And please welcome Mr. Ken Bohnsack.
In the 1990s, I set out to spread the word about government-created money. And for many who believed what I was telling them and understood what I was telling them, they invariably said, I understand, I believe, and it is good, but Ken, the situation in the country has to get worse before there'll be believers. Therefore, I titled this, Has It Gotten Worse Enough Yet? Dick reiterated many things, and I just want to add to that list of things that are happening here. The bailout, you know, the big casino now that we're facing, the $700 billion. And I want to add that when we bailed out the savings and loan, it was estimated it was going to cost $50 billion. And it was close to $150 billion when they were done. So, then there are the hedge funds. Anybody talking about hedge funds and derivatives? You know, they're like radon.
Nobody knows.
You can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't grasp it, but boy, they're there. I want to remind you about the automobile manufacturers, and you know they're coming to Washington too now. There's handouts to be made. Let's get in line. One thing my son told me, he's worked up the corporate ladder with Delphi, the largest automobile parts manufacturer, coming out of bankruptcy. But he said an interesting word that is now being circulated in the automobile industry, it's called decontenting. It's not a real word, it really isn't, but this is the word that is being used. And what it means is, you remember when you bought your first car, whenever that was, and there were items that they said, you know, this is an option, that's an option, and you got to choose, which was good, and there were neat things, and then in a couple of years, hey, they were standard on the car. But there were more options, and they kept improving and adding things. And gee, you can open your trunk now by pressing a button right next to the front seat of your car. And this went on and on, but we got to this point. Those are called contents in their language. And now it's decontenting. They're going to take some of these things off, he said. No longer with this button or that switch or so forth. That is what we've come to. Then there's the trade deficits, yes. Then there's the budget deficit. The national debt, you know, the number to remember, is $1.5 billion per day of interest. Then the currency devaluation, and of course the two worst wars sucking $10 billion out of our economy. The energy crisis, where now we are urged by the most greedy of drill baby drill. The transportation problems. You know, airlines are playing touch and go with bankruptcy. Education, well, where are our engineers, pray tell? Infrastructure, Dick talked about that. But I want to add to the problem of infrastructure. The problems where these cities and counties and states, they're leasing or selling off their physical assets. Indiana with their big tollway. But down in Corpus Christi, they've leased a port, and in San Antonio, an airfield. To whom, you might ask? In both cases, it's to China. So, wow, is it bad enough yet? So, okay, where do we start? Well, we need a bill. A bill, because we are a republic form of government. And you don't change government guns, you change it with a bill. You do it properly. So that's what we've got to do. And fortunately, we got one. Now, I was impressed with the fact that I knew we needed to downsize it and to get it to the point where we're talking about just the bare knuckle facts of it so that common people can better understand it. And I was impressed with the fact that what was brought to the greening the dollar, you know how small that was? Wow. Here, I got this bill introduced that Dick referred to in 1999. Here it is. There's 14 pages, and it was done by the person in Congress. He's buried in the bottom of the Cannon building, by the way. That's his office. But my point is, in 14 pages, look, it's double spaced and wide margins and large print. So this, if it was written the way we're normally accustomed to, would probably be about 4 pages or 5 pages. So that's what we have to do too. We have to make it so simple for them. So what would greatly influence them to support the bill? This is Congressman now. Well, I want to tell you, here's a book that gives all the committees and subcommittees in Congress. And in the House of Representatives, where such a bill must start, because it's a money bill, there are 21 committees and 77 subcommittees. Now, these are fiefdoms by themselves, and the chairman in charge is king of this fiefdom. And I mean king. Everybody else on that committee or subcommittee is a poor serf of the first order. And if this king decides which bill is going to be introduced and have a hearing, you can introduce them. There were over 6,000 introduced in this current 2-year congressional session we're just ending up with. Over 6,000. Well, 6,000 bills don't get a hearing. Only a few. Only the ones the king says, yes to you, no to you, you okay, not you guys, and so forth. Now, you think anybody kind of suckers up to the chairman, the king? I'll say, okay, so what do we have to do? I'm saying we've got to give them cover. Cover. They've got to be protected. They don't want to stick their nose out. They want Mikey to eat the cereal first, and then maybe they'll jump in. So we've got to give them cover, and in a way I don't blame them. There's none of you, and me included, that if we were involved with an organization, and especially if we were chairman, that we don't want to be embarrassed. Because if you're embarrassed, you may not get elected. And so you're very careful. I mean, what's going on now in our political scene with the 2 candidates for president, they're very careful. Everything is shown to the public, if you mispronounce some word or whatever. So they're careful. And so, as we would be, so we've got to give them cover. And so, well, what would be good to give them cover? Well, first of all, it would be great to have a banker on our side. Wouldn't that be great? And we can get one. He's written several books on banking, 8 of them, in fact. One of them is How Your Bank is Ripping You Off. He was president of a bank in Illinois for several years. Another one was How to Battle Your Bank and Win. You think that's the kind of banker we want? You bet. He's been on my side from the very beginning, in the early 1990s. No longer in banking, he's in finance now, but he's way above a lot of people in banking. In fact, everybody in banking. Another thing, what we would need to do is get the support, Dick mentioned it too, but also manufacturers. Wow, do they have a powerful influence in Washington. But when they can see the amount of projects that they can build, in my town, I've gotten involved with the community in such a way that I organized a thing called Quarry Day. Quarry Day is where I got Caterpillar Tractor to donate a lot of equipment, and then the quarry itself donated equipment. And so we were able to bring kids into the quarry on that single day. They paid a fee of $4, but they could sit in the laps of the operators of bulldozers and backhoes and trucks, and then pull the levers and scrape the sand and dump it and so forth. Imagine that. You don't get a chance to ever do that. But they could climb the 23-foot rock wall. They could make cement. They could build brick walls. On it went. Now, we did it for 3 years with marvelous success and great PR from all over. But then the quarry manager said, hey, we can't do it now. And we've been out of the business and doing that for 3 years. And the reason why is the state of Illinois is not cooperating with the federal government. And it's the Illinois part that they're at fault. And so we don't have a construction, a building deal. For 9 years, we haven't had it. So there's less money now going out. And so here again, wow, we could turn loose so much money to build the necessary bridges, roads, sewer systems, and so forth. So we need those manufacturers, and they're not that going to be hard to get. Unions, dang right, in businesses and cities. Now, when we come to Washington, Washington is the home of every conceivable association headquarters in the world. The U.S. Conference of Mayors has been our best friend. I say us because they supported me right from the start. And they are the most influential association in Washington. There's the National Association of Schools. Forget it. They do not comprehend this at all. And yet, you know, they're in education, but therein lies a problem. The problem with them is they've never taught this subject correctly. Earlier this month, I sat next to a teacher of government in our high school. We were at the table because we were registering voters. Damn well we better win this election on the presidential level this time. One of them, we have no chance. The other guy, we got a chance. I'm from Illinois, I'm telling you the truth. But anyways, I asked her about this favorite subject of mine and yours. Where does the bank get the money to lend out? Oh, they get it from the Federal Reserve. I said, they do? Where does the Federal Reserve get it? Well, they you know, and boy, there it came in boom. And it was embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. She's a friend of mine. I know her well. She's a good person. They've never been taught the truth. Never. Why is that? Let's not go into that perhaps, but my point is that U.S. Conference of Mayors is a great one to help us out. So we're going to bring that kind of support to them. The other thing, and Dick referred to again, is getting the support of your city or county. The two favorite stories of mine is the congressman from the Buffalo, New York area. When I could show him that Buffalo signed on, their city council signed on to support the sovereignty proposal, which remember, that was a loan, an interest-free loan program. And his eyes lit up. He said, well, Buffalo is most of my district. Aha, see, we're giving him cover. And if they want it, he's got cover. They can always go to that. He say, well, gee, I got the support of my whole, the whole city of Buffalo. He's got cover, and that's what we've got to give those people. Now, in contrast, the other favorite was on the negative side. You might remember Sonny Bono, mayor of Palm Springs. Mayor of Palm Springs. Now he's in Washington when I'm there. And so I call on that office. Well, boy, this guy's going to be interested. He was a mayor, and he sees all the problems that a mayor needs and has to take care of. And so, okay, the chief of staff said, well, we'll look into this. Fine. I said, I'll be back in maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, fine. I came back, got an appointment. He said, we checked with our Palm Springs office. They never had one person come in and ask about this. So we're not interested. Now think about that. See, there was no cover there. He doesn't have to do anything. The congressman doesn't have to do anything. If nobody back home is interested, he has to do nothing. And in fact, too many of them would prefer to do nothing because it's safer. That is the cover of it is the best. Nothing. So if we can get, what, not 6,000, I've said this in the past, I know, but 6 letters go through that office. I'm telling you, they take notice. And because I would ask, you know, how'd you hear about this? Well, we got, 4 or 5 calls. We got 4 or 5 letters. Really? So I know it's the truth. So that's the cover that we can give them. There's no better job, none, on the face of the earth than a U.S. Congressman. Those benefits are tremendous. Okay, so what can an individual do? Basically what I said to you. And tell your friend, when we get the bill, if we get the summary down, the short version of it, just like it was with the Green Party, how that is tremendous. That can be seen, because we start losing them if we go too far. But if we can just show them that summary, and they can give it to their neighbor, what do you think? Then we've got something going. This has to go through the Finance Committee. I'm talking about the House now. And the Finance Committee's got about 5 or 6 subcommittees. And our subcommittee, this one will go to the subcommittee titled, how about this? Domestic and International Monetary Policy. Perfect. Just what we want. Just what we want. So that's the chairman, and the king of that fiefdom is Louis Gutierrez. He lives in Illinois. Same state as maybe the next president. Told you, we got a chance. So, okay, we've called on him. It was bad timing. I took a banker into me with him, by the way, but the timing was bad at that time because he went on 60 Minutes. He just became a congressman. It was not too long before that. And he really made a terrible comment about the chairman, the majority leader at that time, Foley. And he was aced out of anybody. He was a pariah for a while. But now that passed, that's long gone. And now he's in a position to really help us. So we've got to influence him. It'd be great if we could influence him. If not him, we'll come in from left field and right field. And that is, we got a list of those congressmen. They're right here. I know who they are, who's on that committee. And we can make some trips to those places. That doesn't take many. But if we go to some of those places in their communities where they live and talk to some of the people in that community, I'm talking now about Chamber of Commerce, I'm talking about other groups in those cities. But maybe the shortcut is to go back to Washington and talk to them in their offices, just like I did getting the 20 subcommittee members, 20 co-sponsors on the first time around, and then 12 the second time around when the bill became H.R. 1452. So just going to those offices, and sometimes, more than once, talking to that chief of staff or the legislative person, and showing him that, and the benefits that congressman is going to have. And one of the best things, the best selling point that I felt was that, look, Congressman, right now, you sponsor a bill. You're very happy about it. Why? Because it's going to build a clover leaf out there on Highway 90, just northeast of me, about 45 miles. You know what it does for me? Sitting in Freeport, Illinois? Nothing. I don't go that way hardly. I'm not going to use that hardly at all. So he's not gonna get any benefit from me, he's not gonna make me feel real good, because oh boy, I helped sponsor the bill, got that cloverleaf built out there. Yeah, what else, I'm gonna say. But this kind of a bill, that we can do here, where, as Dick touched on, where the money can be distributed to every state, every county, every city, and I was using it, when I used sovereignty, I was using a per capita basis, and Dick outlined that. That means every little community that's gonna benefit from it, he can come into my community anytime, in my city, anytime, and he can point to something and say, hey, I helped get that waste disposal plant. You're right. And he can go to the next one, and he can point to this and that, and wow, that's gonna make him feel really good. And me too, and all the people. So, he's gotta feel good about this. That's the thing, because we aren't in the bribe business. We aren't in anything. I was not a registered lobbyist. Why? Because, well, I was just an individual, and I could do that. So we can go to Washington, different ones of us who wish to do that, and see that congressman. But there's also one other committee that has members on it that's going to be really interested in this bill. It's called Transportation and Infrastructure. They're the ones that deal with the money that goes out from the gas tax, the federal gas tax that builds up and builds up, and they get to decide who's going to get it. Well, I'm telling you, if you're on that committee, you just happen to get more for your district than the guy that's not on the committee. So consequently, they are interested in this bill as well, because they're interested in infrastructure, rightfully so. The other thing we must remember when we're in Washington is that, and this was a surprise to me, and somewhat of a disappointment, I guess, but a surprise more, and that is, the people on Committee on Armed Services, they don't talk to the people on that committee or that committee. And you can have your favorite congressman, if he's on that committee, and we're talking about this banking thing, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to be a sponsor. I only sponsor bills that I are involved in committees that I'm involved in. It's kind of a narrow way in a way, but okay, we have to understand that. But there are the people on the committee of transportation and infrastructure should be really important. However, if you have a favorite congressman like your own, I don't care what committee he's on, you can show him the benefit that's going to come to his district. He happens to be on committees 1, 2, and 3, but this is on committee 10, and it's okay. So he can see that if you talk to him. But I made the mistake of trying to just go down the line, almost door to door, and it doesn't work. It's good to have other co-sponsors, but it's important and critical that you get co-sponsors from the committee that this is being handled under. And that's that subcommittee of domestic and international monetary policy. Okay. Be good to show them the advantages to the country as well. Not hard to tell other friends about it. Okay. So what's the next step then? I think we just covered it. Got to get that hearing. Okay. I passed out something to you that I'm saying to you, what are our selling points? And one of the selling points that I felt strongly about is that this has been done 3 times in our lifetime. Dick referred to, I think, 2 of them, the early ones. Our colonists, they had the Continental. That's how they were able to buy the guns, ammunition, pay soldiers, and so forth. And thankfully, the people selling that said, you know, okay, we believe you, knowing that if they lost to the British, those Continentals weren't worth a thing. Later on, they weren't, because they were counterfeited, not because of anything else that was wrong. Okay, Dick referred to Lincoln, but let's go back just to World War II, because they recognized World War II, these congressmen. They'll never turn their back on the veterans in World War II, you know, the big victory. Well, what about World War II? Look at that page that I gave you, and I'm two things I call your attention to. In the very first paragraph, the whole bill to fund the war was $320 billion. Wow. But the more important one is over here on the right-hand side, the start of the second paragraph. Why wasn't the bankers' lobby able to arrange matters so that they got to create the whole $80 billion that was being created by both banks and the government, where the banks were creating the $60 billion and the government only $20 billion? Why couldn't they get the whole $80 billion? Well, as it says, well, banks can create money only if they have sufficient reserves. That's the system we're on now. And the reserves are the result of government-created money. Now, do you think for 1 minute what's going to happen? We're not going to be able to borrow all that money without having banks have reserves. Somebody's going to have to create the money. The government is going to have to create something, I believe. Therefore, well now, they've opened Pandora's box. And let's go in full bore. We've got the truth. We've got the truth on our side on that one. Well, the next thing comes January 20th. We can't do anything now, of course, I don't believe. Congressmen want desperately to get this thing out of the way so they go home and campaign. October is usually the whole month is donated to campaign. Every House member, as you know, is up for re-election. A lot of them are on thin ice, so they want to go home, want to be re-elected, and members of the Senate as well. And so right now, we could have one party controlling both the Senate, the House, and the presidency. And if we did, that would overcome the filibusters that the minority party in the last 2 years have raised up 86 times and stopped some otherwise good bills. So we won't have that. So we've got a chance. The window is open, maybe briefly, we don't know, but that's the chance that we're looking at. I'm not asking you about your political preference. You know mine. One other thing, and now there's one of the things that turned me on and helped me so dramatically. It was already talked about today, is that this booklet called Money Matters. Is that correct? That was the title, right?
Money Facts.
No, Money Matters. That Bob copied. What was it, Bob?
Modern money making.
Modern money making. Yeah, right. Okay. You know what? Why is that so good? Because it backs us up. Who backs us up? The Federal Reserve backs us up. And here is this booklet here. I'll just read two of them. Do the Federal Reserve banks use gold to create money? No, the Federal Reserve banks create money out of nothing. The money they create enters the economy in the form of checks when each bank draws on itself. Now, here's the quote. Put another way, when the Federal Reserve buys government securities, it is by the mere stroke of a pen, putting new money into the banking system. Money which in itself can lead to the creation of even more new money. Yeah, about 20 to 1 at least. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money. Now, if you told your neighbor that, he'd think you're kind of crazy, wouldn't he? But then you read the next line. It was written in Putting It Simply, written by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, page 17. Wow, we're documenting our stuff. Here, one more. Oh, do commercial banks, you know the one downtown, do they create money? Yes. They do, yes. Commercial banks, however, lend in a different way. They create new checkbook dollars and add to them to a borrower's checking account. Because commercial banks create almost all new dollars, they play a special role in our financial system. Got it, folks, they got it in cartoon form here. In quote, written by the story of, in the story of banks, by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, page 4. We've got the document, we've got the backup, we've got the right thing, and let's go and do it. Thank you.